Brothers and sisters, aunties, uncles, and play cousins. What's good, my family? It's your boy, Professor Michael. Alumni, we back at it. Chapter 6. Listen, I know after we watched the last video, Chapter 5, I said that I was going to go check out the song with Ren and Sam Tompkins and a couple other things. Anyway, thank y'all. I usually don't like spoilers, but thanks to y'all, I didn't become a spoiler myself. So, got news for y'all. In the comments, some people told me that the song that I was getting ready to go listen to with Sam Tompkins and Ren is actually featured in Chapter 7. So because of that, I stayed away. Because even though people said there are multiple versions of it and I can go check out this version and I may like this version more than this version and blah, 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 so it won't spoil it. For me, I want it to be my first time hearing the song. I don't care what version it is. I want to hear the song for my first time with y'all. So I'm going to wait, regardless of how many versions there are. I'm not going to check out any of them because I don't want to know the context of the song. I don't want to know the words. I don't want to know anything. I'm going to do that with y'all live. But check it out. That's going to make episode 7, chapter 7, very special between me and y'all because, and it's going to be long too. So y'all know, get ready, buckle up. Because in chapter 7, after we watch the video, I'm going to not only listen to the version that's attached to the video of chapter 7, but I'm going to react to all 3 of the other versions as well in the next video. So you guys are going to get 4 reactions. I look like Brother Man from the 5th floor. I just held up 3 fingers. Y'all, y'all are going to get 4. That's 4 reactions in the next video. So buckle up for chapter 7. That one's going to be long. But I'm going to do them all with y'all. I'm going to do all 4 of them. But I don't want to hear the song without y'all. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till the next episode. So today, we got chapter 6. We're going to go ahead and get on into it. Thank y'all for continuing to ride with me. I'm loving this journey. Man, this rabbit hole is deep, and we're going all the way to the bottom of it. So we in here for a minute. We in here for a minute. Hey, please make sure you hit the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Old Heads Media, please consider subscribing. Come on in here, become part of the university, become an alumni member, and make sure you hit the notification bell so you can stay up on everything that we're doing over here. All right. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this. I'm excited, ready to go. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun. Now, everybody told me that this one is going to tug at me a little bit. So I think I'm prepared. Every time I say that, I'm not prepared. Maybe I should just stop saying the shit. Whatever. Let's go.
I'm going to try and hold it together throughout this one.
That speaks already. Y'all have told me that number 6 is hard. But even he starts the video out saying, I'm going to try to hold it together through this one. I guess I've been warned now by y'all and him.
"2015 was the worst year of my life. At the end of 2014, I attended a private UK-based ME specialist clinic called Breakspear. For some reason, the treatments had sent my health nosediving, and I became more sick than I'd ever been. I became so weak that I couldn't walk to the bathroom without needing to lie on the floor to recover. I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't read. I couldn't watch TV. All I could do there was lie there in pain. It was obvious during this time that I needed to move back home with my mum again. She moved to Cardiff with a new husband, and they had a spare room, which became my tomb for the next 8 months. At this point, I was so weak that the most that I could manage to do a day was to take a shower.
I'm sorry. He said became my tomb for the next 8 months. That speaks volumes of where this is going.
A new husband, and they had a spare room, which became my tomb for the next 8 months. At this point, I was so weak that the most that I could manage to do a day was to take a shower. The rest of the time I was confined to my bed. I started reacting even more severely to foods, so every single meal had to be blended into soups or broths to avoid negative reactions. Pain constantly shot through my shin bones and through my feet, like splinters. My stomach would gurgle, and the muscles in my body would constantly twitch, spasm, and ache. My body felt drained of every single ounce of life, and I was so tired, but I was too wired to sleep. I was so full of mental fog that reading a single page on a book seemed impossible. The daylight coming in from behind the curtain hurt my eyes. Loud sounds felt overwhelming. All I could do was wait and pray for sleep, knowing that when I woke from it, nothing would change. I wouldn't feel in any way rested, and all the symptoms would persist. This went on and on and on. It was day after day of physical and mental torture. I thought of concentration camps, of prisoners of war being tortured. At least the escape of death seemed likely. During that time I never got breaks. My whole body burned, my brain was on fire, and I had nowhere to hide. In the merciful moments where I could concentrate, I tenaciously trawled the internet, looking for ways out. My research drew me to a procedure called a fecal transplant that was having success managing things like Crohn's disease or colitis. It also gained success in some select cases of autoimmune conditions like MS too. At the time, I felt like much of my issues were caused by dysbiosis, which means an imbalance in your gut flora. I noticed that all the food intolerances started after a large course of antibiotics for the parasite. I wondered if the parasite had wreaked havoc on my microbiome before I nuked it with antibiotics that worsened it further. Fecal transplants can introduce a whole host of probiotic bacteria into your gut, and it can re-establish a healthy homeostasis. In normal person speak, I wanted to pay to put another person's poop in my butthole. I carried on filming videos from my bed, blogging my experience. I was pretty convinced that during this time I wouldn't be alive much longer, and part of me wanted there to be some kind of document of what I'd been through in hopes that it might help someone later down the line.
And if this illness does kill me, then I want this video. I want somebody who can take notice of this video and do something with it.
I had a fun
And do something with it.
I had a fundraiser open to save money for the fecal transplant, which was very slowly creeping up. I needed to save $6,000 in total. I remember my girlfriend wanting to come and visit, but telling her that I didn't want her to. There are a few reasons for this. One, I was pretty sure I was going to die soon. The day before Joe died, I'd been sat with him at a pub, catching up, playing pool, cracking jokes. I'd often wondered if I'd have been hit less hard by his death if I'd been away at university when it happened. For my girlfriend's sake, I wanted her to have distance from me. I also felt ugly. I felt unlovable. I was unable to communicate, and I didn't want her to see me like that. I watched my mum look thinner and more frail every day that she had to watch her son deteriorate, and I felt immense guilt. My mum would often walk in and find me either crying on the bathroom or kitchen floor, having no energy to get back into bed. She'd often sit with me and massage my feet, which always hurt, and she'd hum melodies to me like she would do when I was a little boy. During this whole time, I hadn't picked up my guitar. I barely had any sunlight touch my skin, and I lost a lot of weight. I was about 130 pounds at my lowest, about 8 or 9 stone, which for someone who is 6'1" is very skinny. My average weight is usually about 168 pounds, 12 stone. Every day the same thing. I'd wake up in pain, eat a meal of blended vegetables and chicken, lie with my eyes closed for hours while the world seemed to spin erratically, and I'd often cry as the bones of my legs felt like they wanted to grow out and burst out of my skin.
You know, in this moment, one of Ren's greatest gifts to us, and one of his gifts that to himself that he was blessed with, is his ability to transform his words to visual transfers, experiences to the people that listen to him and engage with him. I've said it in other videos before. He has a way of saying things in such a poetic way that it creates pictures, it creates images in your mind as he's speaking. The problem with that is sometimes for people like me, as he's talking about all this pain and suffering, I can see it. And it hurts. Because from a fly on the wall perspective, or an empathetic perspective, or just somebody who gives a fuck about anything's perspective, literally while he's talking, I feel like I'm standing in the doorway of his room looking at him like that. And it hurts my feelings because I don't want to see anybody like that. We're not even a fraction into this video. And I can honestly say, with all seriousness, this is my hardest video so far. Because the pictures in my head are causing me problems. Here we go.
Despite this, what I didn't know is things were about to get a lot worse.
Worse?
Come June, I've been in bed for about 6 months straight. I've regained some energy to leave the house every now and then to go shopping for groceries with my mum, and I've finally reached my target for the fecal transplant, and my mum drove me to the clinic to get the procedure. Everything seemed to go as smoothly as it could for such a bizarre experience.
I'm going to go back a little bit. Also, thinking about that, other people are going to watch this video, not the renegades, but other people are going to watch this video. And you have people that are going to make that comment. Stupid people. Anyway, to think about how bad off you have to be to have it ever even cross your mind that I'm going to go and have a procedure that takes fecal matter from someone else and transplants it into another person in effort to create an environment of good probiotics and things like that in your system and maybe fight off parasites and things. But just the thought of getting so bad that that's your solution. That's not even something that he said was prescribed by a doctor. Hey, you need this. This is something he discovered, unless I'm wrong, but just from the impression I'm getting from the video, this is something that he saw, he discovered, and said, I want to try that because I got to try something.
And I finally reached my target for the fecal transplant, and my mum drove me to the clinic to get the procedure. Everything seemed to go as smoothly as it could for such a bizarre experience. I received a colonic irrigation, which was like a car wash for your colon. Actually feels pretty good. They then proceeded to put someone else's excrement in my behind. They would repeat this process for 5 consecutive days. When I got home, I realised I felt a little odd, almost manic, and I was hopeful that this meant my energy was coming back. But it wasn't a nice feeling. As the days progressed, I started to feel an innate sense that something was very wrong. It seemed my immune system was going into some sort of overdrive. My brain was buzzing, and the more time that passed, the more uncomfortable I felt. I remember early one morning, I was lying on the kitchen floor after attempting to get a glass of water. My body hurt so much that I was digging my nails into the laminate flooring, screaming, and my mum ran in and asked me what was wrong. I remember repeating, "I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go," over and over again. I felt myself falling down a deep tunnel in my mind, almost as though my entire soul was tumbling down into an abyss. When I finally crashed to the bottom, I was hit with this immense feeling of stillness and peace. I stopped crying, I sat up, and my mother looked at me, puzzled. I have not felt to this day that sort of serenity that I felt in that moment. I looked around the room and everything seemed to have gained a clarity and quality, but what was most peculiar was the feeling of stillness. There seemed to be some sort of respite from the mental torture and fog in my brain. I still to this day have no explanation for what happened. I looked at my mum, I smiled at her calmly, and I told her that everything was okay now. Her partner Michael came in, and I remember them both looking at me, perplexed. I started speaking fluidly for the first time in months, but it wasn't quite me. I was cracking jokes, being witty. My mum would laugh nervously. I remember feeling as though I was coming up off an ecstasy pill. I felt this underlying feeling of euphoria. I caught myself occasionally erratically snapping my fingers or making whistling noises in between sentences, or staring at some empty part of the room as though there was somebody there, then snapping back to the space and talking to my mum. This feeling of intense euphoria lasted about 48 hours. During this time, I'd adopted some newer strange behaviours. Everything in my room that wasn't parallel bothered me, so I had to make sure it was aligned and facing the same direction. The whistle and the finger click became a new tick, and it started rising in frequency the more time that elapsed. I also noticed that I get stuck on words or sentences when talking to my mum. For example, if I was saying a sentence like, "I'm not sure how I'm feeling today," I would sometimes get stuck on the whole sentence or just a word from it and repeat it about 30 or 40 times before I could move on to the next. So I'm not sure how I'm feeling today, feeling today, 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 over and over. I can't really explain why, but it's like saying it carved out a safe space for me. After about 2 days, that feeling of peace and euphoria was swapped out for a feeling of immense dread and doom. I felt fear fill my body unlike any fear that I've ever felt. I'd often wake up in the early hours of the morning screaming at the top of my lungs, a torturous scream that would fill the whole house, a scream like my legs were being sawn off. I felt pure terror. My mum would run in and try and calm me down. Sometimes I'd be thrashing, hitting the mattress, pounding the walls. It usually ended up in me exhausting myself and her stroking my head in her lap as I sobbed and repeated the same words over and over again. Everything in these moments terrified me. The compulsion to make everything parallel became a necessity. Whenever I was in the kitchen or car and the dials were facing the wrong way, it taunted me. My mum started taking me to a weekly talk therapist in hopes it would stop me from killing myself. I did catch myself researching the most painless ways to do it. I often daydreamed about death, and it made me feel at peace. At this point, intense paranoid delusions started creeping in.
Come on, man. This is rough, man. This is fucking rough. We're gonna get through it, y'all. I'm just breathing.
I often daydreamed about death, and it made me feel at peace. At this point, intense paranoid delusions started creeping in. I wondered if what was happening to me was demonic. I don't remember how I got there, but I remember one time speaking on the landline to someone who claimed to be an expert in dark magic. He told me that being around my mum was bad for me. He told me that she was bad. He told me that I needed to do a ritual with black wax candles in order to free myself. I remember ordering black candles from eBay, and when they arrived I had a change of heart, and I decided against doing this dark magic ritual. I fell asleep that night, and I woke up the next day to find the candles totally melted onto the white mantelpiece that they were on. They'd never been lit. I still don't really know for certain if anything of these things happened, but the melted wax was definitely real. I remember picking it off with my nails.
That's crazy. He never lit the candles, but he woke up and the candles were melted. Bro, that's crazy.
There were moments that my rational mind knew that I was hallucinating. Sometimes in the night I would hear perfect string quartet symphonies with no sound source for them to be coming from. I remember one time my mum took me with her to the post office because during this time I'd rarely been left in the house alone. I remember the lady behind the till reaching for some sellotape. As she tugged on the tape, it sounded as though it had been amplified 1,000 times. It was deafeningly loud. I ran out of the store crying and shaking, and I sat in the passenger seat of my mum's car, rocking back and forth, where she found me uncontrollably sobbing, repeating the words, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't.
You know, Ren going through the things that he's going through and the torture and the term, so there's nothing equivalent to what he felt. But in this moment, I find myself, because he mentioned her, empathizing with his mother. Because I can imagine myself as a parent, the pain and sorrow that I would feel having to watch my child suffer like this. And there's nothing I can fucking do about it. And I can almost guarantee that Ren wasn't the only person that cried herself to sleep. You know, his mom probably had some really, really drastic moments of breakdown of her own. My son, my baby. And then this motherfucker gonna tell her that his mom was bad for him. That kind of pissed me off. That's crazy. Here we go. This is another example of someone who didn't know anything real about his situation other than what he told him, the pain and stuff he was experiencing. You don't know anything about his life, his story, none of the history. Nobody had even diagnosed exactly what was doing this yet. But this motherfucker that don't nothing gonna say, here, buy my candles or buy these candles, whatever it was. And your mom is bad for it. What? Where the fuck that come from? I'm sorry. I'm not going to go on a rant about the mom. The only thing that I'm going to say about the mom is that I feel her pain in this moment too. Like I said, because as a parent, man, kudos to Ren's mom. The strength, we talk about Ren's strength, but the strength that his mother must have had to develop in that moment, watching my son go through this, and I can't help him. Nobody will understand. I ain't gonna say nobody. Unfair. There's a lot of people who will. But the average person would never understand that woman's pain.
Over and over again. My paranoia grew. I boomeranged between thinking I may have been latched onto by some demonic entity, and I became suspicious of even my own family, to thinking I might be part of some sort of twisted experiment, where a group of observers were seeing how far they could push me before I snapped and shattered. My irrational mind concluded that if I start behaving in unexpected ways, I might confuse the people conducting this experiment, and they'd shut it down. I'd sit in my own bed manically grinning in response to the jolt of pain in my legs. I'd say things to Mum and Michael which made no sense at all. This all seemed to be leading up to a very unusual day. I can't quite recall the details of how it happened because it was quite tricky to tell what was reality and what was not. But from what I remember, I was in a car with my mum parked outside a supermarket, and I'd put my laptop on the roof of the car while I'd helped her with groceries. I'd forgotten it was there and she drove off. It wasn't until about an hour later I noticed and I started panicking. My laptop had on it hundreds of songs from my time in Brighton. It was all I had really to show for my life. I was already in such an emotionally fragile space that losing that felt like some sick, torturous joke. We drove back and searched every place it could be with no luck. As we were driving home, my mum pulled up at a junction and something in me snapped. I got out of the car and I ran away from it. I convinced myself this was still part of the experiment, because what else could explain that sort of luck? Once I got far enough away, I proceeded to strip off all my clothes, and I lay in the middle of a road staring up at the sky, laughing in hysterics. This was the opposite of how one should react to losing their computer, and so it seemed like the perfect way to confuse my observers. With time, the police showed up, as did my mother. By some miracle, she convinced them not to take me in or section me. And by a further miracle, they also relayed to my mum that a dented laptop had been handed in an hour earlier. I took this as meaning my experiment had worked. I eventually snuck off as my mum was talking to them. I wandered slowly around this unfamiliar village until I encountered the second angel I would meet in my life, this time in the form of a black homeless man. I'm not sure how we got there, but as I was walking, I turned to my side and a man dressed in tattered grey clothes was walking beside me. He asked me what was wrong, and I explained the best I could the events of the day. I explained that I'd been sick a very long time, that I was tired, so tired, and that I just wanted to be better. The homeless man paused. He put his hand on my shoulders and he stared into my eyes. His eyes had a light grey tint. They were almost white, and something about his presence made me feel incredibly safe, incredibly still. He smiled, a kind smile, and he said to me, "Everything's going to be okay, Ren." And then he vanished. I hadn't told him my name. I never hallucinated anything after that day. I have no real
Wait a minute. He's got the candles that he woke up in the morning and they were melted to the nightstand, to the dresser, whatever that they were sitting on that had never been lit. He meets this homeless black man. The black man tells him everything's going to be okay, Ren, and then disappeared. And he said, I never told him my name. Bro. You know, the funny part is when you watch these, the hard parts, the deep parts are so hard. They're so deep. They're so emotionally draining. But the beautiful parts are so beautiful that they get you through till the next hard part. But I thought this one was going to take me all the way under. I'm struggling with this one. But that right there just kind of lifted me back up. That was a beautiful. I got a beautiful picture. You know how I just said that when Ren talks that I see pictures, I see images, moments. That one gave me a beautiful picture.
It's going to be okay, Ren. And then he vanished. I hadn't told him my name. I never hallucinated anything after that day. I have no real explanation for that day. I chalk it down to a psychotic episode or stress-induced hallucination, but the events which follow put a lot of questions in my mind. What he said to me was very simple, but also very needed. I realise a lot of people might hear these stories and just presume I'm a bit mad, a bit weird, like I do when people tell me their ghost stories. All I can do is tell you my experience and let you derive your own conclusions from it. Anyway, I got home and I started to obsessively research ways to escape this new seemingly psychotic space I was in. It's a strange thing to describe, but it was like me, Ren, was in the passenger seat of my mind while some other entity was steering the ship. I was watching myself do things like scream at night or repeat words over and over, and I think to myself, damn, that's pretty crazy. But I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Every now and then I had moments of lucidity where I was more in control. I was doing things like stimming. I had night terrors, vocal tics, I'd stutter and I'd stammer. And for me, a lot of that lined up with some sort of transitory or stress-induced autism. I'd known a family with an autistic teenager and some of the behaviours seemed to line up, which led me to a new pathway of online research. I came across this support group for a subset of children with autism called PANDAS, P-A-N-D-A-S. It was believed that these kids had the neurological infection of the Streptococcus bacteria that was causing these autistic-like behaviours. I was presenting with some similar behaviours. These kids would do long courses of antibiotics and their symptoms would diminish or disappear and they'd be seemingly normal children again. I speculated that the fecal transplant introduced a whole host of new bacteria into my gut, but that I didn't have the immune regulation to be able to control it, and it had sent my entire system into some sort of inflammation overdrive. I researched the most effective antibiotic for Streptococcus, one being penicillin, and I convinced my mum to take me to the doctor where I faked a stomach bug. I lied to him, and I said I'd had similar things in the past, and that penicillin cleared it right up. He reluctantly prescribed me a 2-week course of antibiotics because I was so persistent. I got home and I started the course. Initially, I felt fucking awful, somehow even more tired than usual, and then towards the end of the course, I noticed a definite shift in my energy and comfort. By the end of the course, my psychotic behaviours had disappeared and my energy felt a lot better. I stayed indefinitely on various herbal antibiotic supplements like oregano oil at this time, having learned that this was also active against certain pathogenic bacteria. Keep in mind also, I'm just going off script right now, keep in mind if I'd have followed the advice of most of the doctors that I'd seen at the time who were talking to me about my psychotic behaviours, I would have probably been put into a mental facility and medicated with medication that I didn't need, and would have probably gotten a lot worse. So it was very lucky that I took no one tells you that antibiotics can treat psychosis, and these antibiotics did actually treat my psychosis. And I was no stranger to the placebo effect. I'd taken everything, it wasn't placebo. It didn't matter. After about a week, I'd finished the course, and some of my more familiar symptoms like fatigue and pain started creeping back again. But that didn't matter, because what this whole experience had taught me was that the origin of my sickness was in fact bacterial, and it was pathogenic. The biggest thing it taught me was I could actually do something about it. I was no stranger to the placebo effect after years of trialing different drugs and supplements. This wasn't placebo. I took to the internet again and found a world-renowned specialist over in Brussels who was also leading a lot of the cutting-edge research for ME. I got on the phone and made an appointment. He was booked up for the next 9 months, but that gave me enough time to save money. The antibiotics and new herbs I was taking had also given me a new lease of life, and the hope for a cure made me more determined than ever. I started having enough energy to go on walks, which was huge for me at the time. My dad would drive over to my mum's and we'd go out in the car, and I'd take photos of wildlife on beaches. I was picking up my guitar again after months in bed. I eventually invited my girlfriend over and made the decision to move back to Brighton as soon as I was strong enough to. It was around this time that I started working on the album Freckled Angels. I knew that the future tests weren't going to be cheap. I pulled together some old tracks from the days I was working with Sony, and I got hold of Eric and asked his permission to release them, which he graciously granted, so thank you, Eric. I then pulled together some newer material and compiled my first ever album from my bedroom. In those days, I had no real way of promoting myself and no energy to do shows, so it was mostly to be listened to by my friends and family. I named the album Freckled Angels after Joe. Joe was covered head to toe in freckles, and it seemed fitting to dedicate this work to one of the coolest and funniest people I ever knew. Any ounce of energy I did have from my limited reserves, I'd pour into recording that album. It's by no means a work of art, and it's a bit thematically disjointed, but some songs like Crutch or Pocket Full of Pain went a long way to photographing that time. I'm gonna leave you with a recording of Pocket Full of Pain. Back in those days. Enjoy.
That was rough. Especially the first half of that. The first half of that was rough. I was able to survive it. It was hard. I had to take a couple of breaths. It did get better, but that was tough. So this song is called Pocket Full of Pain. Okay. Y'all, I don't know, man. All right. I got it together enough. Let's go with the song.
Cool.
The yin and yang symbol in the background just couldn't have been more perfect for where Ren goes. Yeah, let's go.
Da, 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 da. Yeah, 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 yeah.
I watch the sun when it rises, when it's climbing the sky. I sit here with the pocket full of pain. I've got tears in my juice, in my mind. There's a noose, but my hope makes me cling to the day. I wanna run with the sun and the moon and the stars till I'm running faster than my pain. I wish I could breathe out this fear, this doubt, send it into the Milky Way. I got my finger on the trigger of a Magnum 44, but survival instinct won't let me bleed. I wanna put a bullet straight in my cerebral tissues place, but my index finger won't let me squeeze. I wanna skate down my vein with the blade till the blood runs thicker than the thoughts in my head. But don't ask me why, this is not my goodbye, it's a suicide failure attempt. Dum, 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 dum. I choose life, I choose life, I choose living. Put the bottles and the pills down, I stand up, I breathe with precision. Calm washes over me like a break in the storm. I close my eyes for a minute, then my troubles transform, and I travel deep into the corners of my mind. I remember the first time I felt hopeless. I think I was 5, cause at the hands of this bully, the lessons that I learned is that this world is not so beautiful. Sometimes it can be burnt by the fires of evil that are living inside the common people just like you and like I. We'll all strive to survive, and we all climb to the top over our brothers and sisters, whether we mean to or not. And we get lost in the tide of insecurities and power-seeking fooleries, but happiness don't live inside no jewelleries. In an age of distraction, we would rather tap on our iPhones than stop a war from happening. It's heartbreaking, Satan's patiently waiting for us to mess up big time, so hell on earth will be blatant. So forgive me for wanting to blow my brains out, but I've got a change of heart. It's time for change now, rearrange now, fist in the sky. I say proud, say loud, revolution word on my brain now. It's with the people, yeah, power's with the people. If the people strive for unity, the world it could be equal. You could be the start of the beginning, a dawn of no stress, no troubles, no sinning, just living. So overthrow evil and greed, put aside your distractions, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, welcome change, welcome change, welcome change with me, welcome change with me, now welcome change with me, now welcome change, welcome change, welcome change with me. Yeah, 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 yeah. And da 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 do.
All right. You know, it always does that. It flips into the next one on me. Let me get rid of that. The first half of that, I was scared. I didn't think I was going to make it through it. I didn't. I was hurting. I was physically hurting listening to the first part of that. Like I said, I saw myself, being a father especially, was hard because I saw myself kind of standing in the place of his mother in the doorway of his room, looking at him like that. And it hurt physically. It hurt because I could imagine myself seeing one of my children have to go through that. I don't know. We're all stronger than we think we are, but I don't know. I don't know where you muster the strength for that, or how I could have mustered the strength for that. But then he brought me back. He brought me back, and he started to speak about, you know, how he started to see changes and some things were coming back, and he was able to see his girlfriend, and he was able to move back to Brighton and all of these things. And then he goes into Pocket Full of Pain. And every time I think I hear a song of Ren's that inspires me the most, here comes another song. And I absolutely adore this song. I adore this song and what he said, the message that was in it, the voices that he used. Hell, I'm not breaking down no bars. There were a couple of lines in there that were pretty tight. But overall, the concept and the words and the meaning behind the song took precedence enough to where I'm not touching it as far as breaking it down. But what I will say is the cadence that he was using, them switches that he was doing in there was sick at the age he was at then. It's also very interesting watching young Ren. But it's revealing too that as you're watching young Ren, you realize this was definitely a gift. This was definitely a gift. This is something that he had in him. He was blessed with this gift. Now, I'm not going to sit up here and start to get religious, spiritual, even metaphorical. I'm not doing none of that. I'm not going to try to make something that it isn't. But I can't deny the fact that it makes me think that all of this went together somehow. The gift, the mind that he has, the heart that he has, the struggles and trials and the suffering that he went through, the visions that he was having during psychosis, whether the man in the park was real or not, all of that stuff. I can't help but wonder, kind of like the yin and yang poster that was behind him, that we needed all of that to get what you and I are enjoying now, what you and I are attached to, what we're so connected to now, that Ren. All of that, the stuff that makes us cry, and the stuff that makes us laugh, and the stuff that makes us proud, and the stuff that makes us hopeful, the stuff that makes us empathetic, all of that stuff. We would not be able to be the renegades that we are without the story that Ren can tell. So that means everything that he went through somehow was necessary in order for us to be able to grow together. If that makes sense to y'all. Anyway, this video is one of the ones that I hit the pause button on the least. I stopped it a couple times, but this wasn't a pause heavy video. Part of it was selfish. I wanted to get through that first part, but I had to take some breaths. Anyway, I love y'all. I really do. Thank y'all for continuing to go on this journey with me. Most of y'all have already experienced what I experienced listening to this, so I'm sure you were probably sitting there looking at my face saying, yep, we get it. We know. Some of you probably laughed at me in a couple moments. Some of you probably cried with me in a couple moments. But that's what makes y'all special. And I'll take it all. I'll take it all. I still don't know how to feel. But I'm glad this one, he took us out with a smile. He took me out with a smile. I love that song. I'm going to go back and listen to it again. Again, thank y'all for continuing to go on a ride with me. I love y'all to death. Ain't shit you can do about it. Till the next one. Class dismissed.